I strongly believe that if you only make one investment in your lifetime, it should be a Roth IRA. And this is because if you simply invest the yearly contribution to this account, you're almost guaranteed to be a millionaire by the time you retire. Unfortunately, according to the Investment Company Institute, only 20% of Americans are taking advantage of this investment account. Whether this is because it seems complicated or most people simply don't know about the benefits, we're going to fix all of this today. In this video, I'm giving you a complete overview of Roth IRA investing. I'm going to show you why this is perhaps the best way to invest for retirement and how it can earn you millions of dollars over your lifetime. Then I'll dive into some of the rules surrounding the Roth IRA so you can get started with full confidence. I'll also show you how easy it is to open a Roth IRA. In fact, you can do it within minutes. And finally, we'll wrap things up with some Roth IRA investing strategies that will help you earn even more money from your investments so that you can retire with more wealth than you'll ever need. Stick around. So I think the first thing that intimidates people about a Roth IRA is the name, because admittedly, it does sound a little complicated. An IRA is simply an individual retirement account. This is a type of investment account that you set up with the sole purpose of funding your retirement. Once you open one of these accounts, it's very similar to any other type of investment account. With the money you put into your Roth IRA, you can invest into stocks, bonds, and even real estate. And I think this is another thing that trips a lot of people up. Investing in a Roth IRA sounds complicated, but in actuality, you're still making very simple and common investments, just inside of a special account. Again, to be clear, the IRA is just the account that holds your investments. It's not the investment itself. So if you're already familiar with the idea of investing in stocks or index funds or other financial products, an IRA is just another vehicle for doing that. But what's most important about IRAs is the enormous tax benefits they give you. And this is the single reason why investing with a Roth IRA can make you so much money. Let's take a closer look at this so you fully understand how big these benefits really are. Keep in mind, we're going to use the median US income of $68,000 for current tax rates. These tax rates will be accurate for anyone making between roughly $40,000 and $84,000 a year, which includes myself and I'm sure most of you watching this video. With standard investment accounts, that is a non-IRA, this is what your investment process would look like. You would receive your paycheck, which you paid a 22% income tax on. Then you buy some stocks in your standard investment account. If that stock pays you a dividend, you will either owe a capital gains tax of 15% or an income tax of 22% on that dividend, depending on the stock. So right there is a piece of your investment growth that you do not get to hold on to. Then whenever you decide to sell your stocks, you will again owe a 15% capital gains tax or 22% short-term capital gains tax if you held that stock for less than a year. So for standard investors, taxes are affecting your portfolio left and right. With a Roth IRA, things get a lot better. Again, you'd receive your paycheck, which you paid the 22% income tax on. But here's where it's different. After you put your money into your Roth IRA, everything that happens after that point is 100% tax-free. So you can then buy stocks in your Roth IRA just like you would in your standard investment account. But this time, whenever you receive a dividend from your investments, you keep 100% of it. This means you can reinvest those extra few dollars into your portfolio instead of paying it to the government. Furthermore, when you reach retirement and you're ready to use this money, you can sell your investments without paying any taxes whatsoever on your earnings. And what this means is that the interest on your investments compounds faster over time, creating more wealth than would ever be built in a standard investment account. So let's compare some real numbers between the two. Starting at the age of 25, if you invested $6,000 a year into a standard investment account, it would grow to approximately $892,000 by the time you reach the age of 60. That's using the market's historical 9% return, which includes dividend reinvestment and adjustments for inflation over the last 100 years. Not too bad. But if you started at 25 and invested $6,000 a year into a Roth IRA, it would grow into approximately $1.41 million by the time you reach the age of 60. That's 50% more money than you could grow in a taxable account, and that's entirely due to letting your money compound tax-free over the years. So if you're investing for retirement, which I would say we all should be, doing it within a Roth IRA is the most efficient decision. And because the market has a 100-year track record, it's pretty safe to assume that it will perform similarly and keep delivering these returns when averaged out over a 30 to 40-year period. All you have to do is invest in a total market index fund like the S&P 500 to secure yourself those consistent annual returns. And this is probably a good time to also explain the traditional IRA, which is a little different from the Roth IRA. I still think the Roth IRA is the better option for the average person, but you'll see why in just a minute. The traditional IRA has an advantage right off the bat. You don't pay any income tax on the money that you invest into the account. Whereas both Roth IRAs and standard accounts are funded with your post-tax income, anything you put into a traditional IRA is 100% tax deductible. So you will effectively invest this money tax-free. Simply put, this means you will be able to invest more money at the beginning without having to earn more money. Then, just like the Roth IRA, this money will build over time completely free from taxes. The exception comes when you get to retirement and you begin withdrawing from your traditional IRA, because any withdrawals will be taxed at your income level. So your investments will grow just as fast as they would in a Roth IRA, but the difference is you'll have to pay taxes on them in the end with a traditional IRA. And ultimately, both Roth IRAs and traditional IRAs are very powerful investment accounts for building your retirement fund. The choice between these accounts will come down to two things: the income tax bracket you're in now and the income tax bracket you'll be in when you retire. As I mentioned earlier, people making between $40,000 and $84,000 are in a 22% income tax bracket. You'll be paying income tax on this money today either way. If you set up a Roth IRA, once you retire, you can withdraw that money without any tax consequences. So if you really want to ball out when you hit retirement, you can take out as much money as you want and not have to stress about owing income tax at all. This is particularly ideal for people who, one, are in lower tax brackets today and not paying too much, like the 12 or 22% tax brackets, and two, people who want the flexibility to withdraw a lot of money in retirement. And considering how much wealth these accounts can accumulate, you may want to have that option. On the other hand, a traditional IRA will allow you to reduce your taxable income today. So if you make $60,000, instead of paying taxes on $60,000 this year, you could invest $6,000 into your traditional IRA and only pay taxes on $54,000 of your income. This will reduce your tax bills until retirement. But when you retire, you'll owe income tax for whatever amount of money you begin taking out. So if you retire and you start taking out $60,000 a year to match your pre-retirement salary, you'll owe the same 22% income tax as you would have owed all your life, which makes it kind of a wash. But if you want to take out money in retirement that is above your current tax bracket, a traditional IRA can be a bad idea. This is because you're wasting your tax break today on a lesser salary, and you're going to end up paying more when you retire and you start withdrawing money that places you in a higher income tax bracket. So for these reasons, a traditional IRA is really best for people who make a lot of money today, like hundreds of thousands of dollars kind of money, because they'll save more money on their tax-deductible contributions today than they will owe for taking out their savings during retirement. So hopefully that clarifies the differences between the types of IRA accounts. And like I said, I think the Roth IRA is generally the better option for anyone making an average income, because you really only benefit from the tax savings of a traditional IRA if you're in a really high tax bracket. However, there are still some rules for the Roth IRA that we should go over. While it really is as easy as investing your money regularly and just letting it grow, there are some restrictions and rules when it comes to these accounts that you should be aware of. The first rule is that the annual contribution limit is currently at $6,000. This means you can only invest $6,000 a year into this account. If you're over the age of 50, you're allowed to contribute $7,000 a year for catch-up contributions. This number usually increases every few years. For example, it used to be $5,500 from 2013 to 2018. I personally like that this number isn't too high because it makes it a very achievable goal to max out that contribution limit every year. $6,000 is about 12% of my annual income, which is just about in line with what many people recommend saving from your salary. So I plan on hitting this limit every year, and with the huge tax benefits that IRAs offer, you might want to consider doing the same. And the next rule has to do with income limits. You cannot contribute to a Roth IRA if you're single and making more than $139,000 a year, or if you're married and making more than $206,000 a year as a couple. And honestly, this isn't a big deal because if you're making this much, you should probably be investing in a traditional IRA anyway. Interestingly, if you're married but only one person makes the bulk of the income, that person can contribute to both their Roth IRA and their spouse's Roth IRA with their earnings. So this is a great way for couples to max out their retirement savings if one person doesn't work full-time or whatever else might be the case. The next rule is that any money you contribute to your Roth IRA must be earned income. So if you own rental properties or live off of your investments, you can contribute the money from those ventures into your Roth IRA. If you're employed or self-employed, you're good to go. So those are the basic contribution rules, but the bulk of rules address how you are allowed to withdraw from this account. Obviously, the tax benefits are so generous that there are rules in place to make sure you're using them appropriately. So before you begin withdrawing from your account, you have to have the Roth IRA open for at least 5 years prior, and you must also meet one of these criteria. You must be 59.5 years old, you have recently become disabled, you have died and the assets are being passed to a beneficiary, or you're withdrawing money for a first-time home purchase. The catch with this last one is you are limited to just $10,000 and you can only do this once in your lifetime. If you don't meet these criteria and you decide to withdraw money anyway, you'll end up owing income tax on these earnings and an additional 10% penalty. Obviously, this is a pretty costly decision, so you should plan to keep your Roth IRA locked up as long as possible. However, there are two ways you can withdraw money from your Roth IRA early without penalties. I still think this should be a last resort because you really want this money to grow for as long as possible. But it's good to know about these options just in case you need them. The first is that you can withdraw any money you've put into your Roth IRA from the current tax year. So if you get halfway through 2020 and you realize you didn't want to max out your contributions, you can pull out that $6,000 without any penalties. As long as you're still in that current tax year, it will just be like the initial contributions never happened. But you can't pull out anything extra, only the exact dollar amount you've contributed so far. The second way you can withdraw money early is if you use it for certain approved expenses. These are pretty specific, and they include to pay for health insurance if you've lost your job, to pay for up to $5,000 of childbirth or adoption expenses, to pay for qualified higher education expenses like tuition or books, or to pay for medical expenses that exceed 10% of your gross income for the year. So that's just about everything you need to know in terms of the benefits and rules surrounding Roth IRAs. Now, if you're ready to get started with this awesome investment account, let me tell you just how easy it is. All you need to open a Roth IRA account is the following documents or information: your employment information, since you'll be contributing earned income, your social security number, your bank account information so that you can fund your account, and you may also need your license or passport handy to prove your identity. But when you have this information ready, you can open an account in a matter of minutes. The only thing left to decide is where to open it. You can open your Roth IRA account at just about any brokerage in existence, with the exception of some newer ones like Robinhood. So it really comes down to your investment style and how involved you want to be in your investments. If you're overwhelmed by the thought of selecting your own investments, you might want to choose a robo-advisor, which will diversify your investments safely for you. Some of these popular services include Wealthfront and Betterment. I personally used Betterment when I first opened my Roth IRA, and it was super easy. You just answer a few simple questions about your risk tolerance, and they take care of the rest. The only thing I didn't like was that they charged a fee of 0.25%. And it may not sound like much, but that's just a few more dollars that are getting taken out of your investment and slowing your growth. In fact, a study by NerdWallet found that just a 1% annual fee costs investors over $500,000 over a 40-year period. So we can conclude that a 0.25% fee can cost over $100,000 over that 40-year period. At my age, a Roth IRA is just under a 40-year investment, and I'd certainly like to have $100,000 more when I retire, so zero fees are an absolute must. For this reason, I'm currently using M1 Finance, which I like because it has no fees and it offers fractional shares. So if you're only investing small amounts each month, this makes sure every dollar gets put to use as soon as possible. They also have a cool balancing feature where any dollar you invest will get properly allocated across your portfolio to keep you at your desired diversification strategy. This is a huge help because it automates what would otherwise be a cumbersome maintenance task, so I have full control over exactly what I'm investing in, but I can still do it with pretty minimal work. But to be honest, I'm not totally in love with M1 Finance, so I might actually switch in the next few years if I come across another brokerage that wins me over. Brokerages like Merrill Edge, Fidelity, Vanguard, and TD Ameritrade are all respected platforms for Roth IRAs and investing in general. So if you want to open your Roth IRA with a trusted and long-standing brokerage, you might want to start with one of these guys. Like I mentioned with Betterment, I would just suggest that you open your account wherever you can find the absolute lowest fees. Luckily, fees are getting slashed across the board, so finding a zero-fee brokerage shouldn't be too hard. But now you should be totally prepared to open your Roth IRA, start investing in it, and fully understand the benefits behind doing it. Before we wrap up, I want to share a few tips for the investor-savvy individuals who are looking to be a little more involved in their Roth IRA investments. The main strategy I want to share here is simply a reminder that none of your investments will be taxed inside your Roth IRA. And this is really advantageous for investors who want to put their money into income-producing or dividend-paying stocks. Now, most dividend-paying stocks pay out qualified dividends, which, as we said earlier, are taxed at the 15% capital gains rate for most people. So you already know you're getting these dividends tax-free in a Roth IRA. But there are also some stocks that pay out what are known as unqualified dividends, which are taxed at the income tax level. These include real estate investment trusts, or REITs, and business development companies, or BDCs. These stocks have special laws governing them that force them to pay out 90% of their profits to shareholders in the form of dividends. And that's really exciting for investors because it means that the dividends are much larger than the dividends you would see from other stocks. But since these dividends are taxed as income, they're not really too attractive for someone investing in a standard taxable account, because you'll end up paying more taxes on these dividends, which will reduce the amount of money you get in your pocket to be more in line with that from qualified dividends. That is, until you hold them in your Roth IRA portfolio. By investing these high income stocks in your Roth IRA, you get the full dividend payments without any tax obligations. And this is a great way to get some serious cash flow into your Roth IRA to help increase the magical effect of compound interest. So this is my personal favorite way for getting a leg up on my Roth IRA investments that would be impossible anywhere else. And if you want to learn more about this strategy or stocks like REITs and BDCs, I have videos on both of these subjects, so I'll link them in the description for you. But that should cover all the bases for getting started with Roth IRA investing. And hopefully you're prepared to start building up millions for your retirement. If you have any questions about Roth IRAs that I didn't answer here, please drop them in the comments below and I will be sure to respond down there or in a future video. Of course, you'll also want to make sure you subscribe to the channel to make sure you don't miss anything valuable. Until then, happy investing and I'll see you next time.